This is where I draw the distinction between do and create. So if you're just doing something would be like go outside and like clean the roses. But if you're creating something, then you're creating, a bouquet for a wedding or a flower arrangement for a birthday, right? So we want our students to be able to go out and create and not just do.
How's everyone doing? My name is Luis. I am joined by Professor Richie and Nikhil. So we have to start on a bit of a little asterisk here. You might notice that Val is not with us. That is because he is having a bit of a medical thing happening right now. So
he's doing fine though.
He's doing fine. He doesn't have COVID. He's not like Nikhil a couple weeks ago where he was riddled with COVID, thankfully.
I didn't have COVID.
Maybe you did. He might have been asymptomatic. So thankfully he's fine. He's resting. He may or may not join us for overrated, underrated, but I'm not counting on it. So it's just going to be us three having a nice casual conversation about a really exciting topic that, funny enough, this is kind of Val's bread and butter. And instead, you're just going to come to me, the guy who's been giving him a lot of grief for how often he brings up blockchain. But we're going to be talking about emerging trends in tech, as well as blockchain in general, and then more specifically, blockchain in regards to voting, which I don't know if you can tell, but I dropped off my ballot yesterday. I voted by mail. Yeah, go vote. I think we said we're going to talk about this at the beginning and end of every show. But if you're in California, early voting has started. It started as of the 5th, I believe. You can go vote in person at your voting registrar's office right now, or you can drop off your ballot if you have a provisional or if you have a mail-in ballot. So make sure you do that. Your voice counts. Make sure you make plans for it. If you don't know where your polling place is, it's a quick Google. Just look up, literally just Google polling place near me, or where can I drop off my ballot? And there's a wealth of information there on how to do that. Okay, I think I'm all good on the introduction there. So without further ado, Professor Rich.
Hello, glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
Please tell us about yourself and how you got started in IS and tech.
Cool. So my name is Yueh, and I believe in meaning over content. So this underlies everything that I do. I produce experiences that help people expand their perspectives. And you can call me a designer. My official title is Assistant Professor of Teaching in Information Systems, UC Riverside. How I got started in tech is like how many people got started in tech, just fiddling around, old computers at home. Video games is a big one. To say, how do things work, right? So the computer, how does it work? Or this device, how does it work? And eventually I got into this kind of rhythm of not necessarily building things, but creating things. And then I said, what is the major or what is the concentration where I can go and build things? Not so much in a civil engineer sense, but more of a device thing sense. And so that was information systems. And then throughout my academic career, I've studied some form of information systems. So in undergrad, it was called computer information technology. Grad school is called software management. And then PhD, it was called management information systems. And then now here at UCR, we call it IS, or information systems. And then in between grad school and PhD, had some work experience at Yahoo, back when Yahoo was Yahoo. Not what it is today, like Verizon or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I still have my Yahoo account that I just shove all of my
your
things.
Burner
account. Burner, exactly, my burner account.
Yep.
No, man, that's super interesting. Honestly, especially kind of knowing, I think what kind of got you interested in the whole thing and how it was just kind of this fascination with tech and with kind of what seems like just kind of tinkering and just being interested in the whole thing as in general, which is, man, I think that's kind of how everybody kind of gets going. I mean, you had the interest with UI UX, I had the interest with brains, and you have the interest with tech.
I'm actually, I found your designer analogy really interesting. More specifically, what type of designer would you call yourself?
Experience design.
Design?
So yeah, UX.
Okay.
And I don't say this as a formal UX designer, but in the sense that I design experiences.
Like
right?
of like classes
Yeah.
and
So a lot of people know me from class, and they mostly can say that class is kind of like an experience.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not just me throwing information at you and saying, repeat this information back to me.
Right.
We'll work on a lab, we'll do some live coding, something like that, to make it more of an experience. And especially now with the COVID times, I tell my students, you know, if we're here on Zoom, if I'm taking time out of 300 people's days to be here on Zoom, I want to make it meaningful.
Oh yeah.
Right? So we'll do something where it's relevant that we are all synchronous, and then that way they can get more meaning out of this class.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's awesome, because I think when people think of like UX and stuff, it's mostly like in terms of like apps or websites and stuff, but there's like there's experience in everything in our lives and everything that we do. And I totally agree. I think the classroom experience is incredibly important, especially in these days. And yeah, I haven't been a part of those post-COVID era like college classes and stuff, but I've heard some nightmare scenarios, and then I've also heard some great scenarios from like professors like yourself who are taking the effort to make sure that their students are learning and are actually gaining value out of this experience.
And I saw a meme a few days ago comparing UI and UX, so user interface and user experience.
Yeah.
UI is the ketchup bottle in a glass bottle.
Right.
And then UX is the upside down plastic squeeze bottle. So both of these are ketchup, but one has a better experience. One is designed for that experience. Yeah.
I like that.
So
Yeah, it's
I
actually
want
a
to
really
be
good
the
analogy.
upside down squeeze bottle ketchup of UCRIS.
My
Trademark.
my favorite real life example is the banana. It's not like comparing two types of bananas, but basically it's literally my favorite fruit, and I realize it's because of the experience. It's like I can take it anywhere I want to. I can drive with it. I don't have to put it in the fridge. All I have to do is peel it, and the peel is like my little wrapper too. So if I'm eating an apple, I might need a napkin to like clean stuff up, right? And the color on the outside also kind of tells you like, oh, it's getting bad, or you can't eat it. So yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody have such like fond things to say about a fruit. That's actually really nice.
I gave that analogy in a webinar once, and I think it was well received. So I'm just gonna keep
it was
using
well received here. I enjoyed it. I
A
think
webinar for Mario Kart fans?
that's true. You didn't talk about the fact that if you have an enemy, you could just
Yes.
toss a banana peel and they're gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
You may or may not be involved in manslaughter, but you know it's a good fruit. So kind of touching on that. In regards to like classes and how you're designing stuff, which I think honestly is like super cool that you're not just trying to do it. You know, you're not just trying to like, oh crap, I have to design these classes, I have to design these courses, and just like put something out there that's literally just like what you would do in a live person. You acknowledge that what's happening right now is different, and you're acknowledging that because of that, it needs to be designed in a way that makes sense for it.
Yep.
So I think that's really cool. And one thing that I kind of want to talk a little bit about is this kind of idea of like curriculum, right? Like talking about kind of what you're bringing to UCR when you think about this design aspect, right? You think of like, how am I designing IS courses that make sense, not just for what's happening right now, but how are you designing courses that are going to allow students 5, 10, 15 years from now to at least have an understanding of a basic fundamental of kind of what they need. I know that you talked about you're teaching a Python class.
Yep.
It's something that I wish I had taken when I was in school, in a school setting, because trying to learn it now, it's awful. Not having that kind of guide.
Right.
But I want to get your understanding on it. What goes through your mind when you're designing new curriculum, when you're thinking ahead on what's going to benefit people down the line?
Yeah. So one thing I tell all my students is, what problem are you solving, right? The company is not hiring you just to do something. They're hiring you to solve a problem. And this is where I draw the distinction between do and create. So if you're just doing something would be like go outside and like clean the roses. But if you're creating something, then you're creating, a bouquet for a wedding or a flower arrangement for a birthday, right? So we want our students to be able to go out and create and not just do. So coming back to the curriculum then is, how can I design a curriculum, or what needs to go into this curriculum so that students can go out and solve problems, right? And actually create things. And one major problem that we face at UCR, but many other schools face, and this is something that I came up with, is called the 20-year problem, or now even the 30-year problem, in that many IS classes, they were designed 30 years ago, right, or 20 years ago, when some of these topics were relevant, and then they just never changed. Like the older professor gave it to the new guy, and then the new guy gives it to the new girl, right? It just keeps going on and on.
Yeah.
And once you get rooted in that structure and you try to change things, then people get mad. They're like, oh, I created that course like 20 or 30 years ago, right? Like you can't drop that course. And so you're kind of stuck in this curriculum. Here at UCR, we are both fortunate and unfortunate to not have such a large curriculum like that. So we have kind of a blank slate or more agile approach to say, what are the courses we can bring in the next 1 to 2 years or 2 to 3 years, depending on the paperwork, so that our students can create things. And then when you approach it from a creation problem or a what problem can I solve approach, then you can bring in like emerging technologies, right? To say, maybe these are not relevant right now. Many of them are, but maybe they're not relevant right now. But in 5 years, right, as Apple keeps pushing LiDAR, then AR is going to be relevant. So you can continue to solve problems 5 years down the road. AI, 5 to 10 years, right? Then you can continue to solve problems down the road. And one good thing about IS, I call it a good thing, is that the curriculum is always changing.
Yep.
All right, so my Python class from this year, spring 2020, was different than my Python class from spring 2019. And then maybe in 5 to 7 years, when there's a new hot language, right, I can just put that into the curriculum, right? So we're always thinking about how can students go out and solve problems and create things.
Yeah, I think that a lot of things I definitely want to like touch on when it comes to IS and this idea of that you kind of brought up, where it's like courses oftentimes are designed by that person who was there 15 years ago, 30 years ago, or at least there is a massive hold kind of in that era, like where maybe not all of the curriculum is necessarily attached to that person or that time, but a majority of it is, whether it's through theory or fundamentals, whatever it might be, one thing that I like kind of what you said is the fact that your course this year is different than your course was last year, which is something that I think is noble. Like it's something that you're constantly looking at, constantly evolving, because at the end of the day, especially within your field, it's something that is constantly changing.
Yep.
And the fact that you're acknowledging that, right now, because of LiDAR, AR technology definitely isn't as adopted as maybe some companies want it to be.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to be adopted down the future when those kind of sensors and that kind of technology gets a lot cheaper to actually produce.
Yep.
I mean, you even think about like VR. I think I personally am of the mindset that AR is going to be a lot bigger than VR, just because of the ways that it can be adopted.
Yep.
But like you look at VR, when you have now, back in the day, when you have like the Virtual Boy, I guess if you want to go there, you have like the Virtual Boy, and that was Nintendo 30 years too soon.
Yep.
Which I hope that Nintendo brings back the Virtual Boy. That's just me personally. But you look at technologies like even in like 4 years ago with the HTC Vive, early Oculus, they were clunky, they were big, there wasn't really a lot of streamlinedness to it, they were expensive.
Yep.
Whereas now you have like I think the Oculus Quest 2, which is entirely mobile powered. It can exist on its own, no wires, nothing. And it puts up numbers equal, if not greater to, VR machines that were around 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago. Honestly, if you look at it that way, I think the technology is getting affordable and it's getting better. And it's stuff like that is going to just happening, whether it's Moore's Law or whatever you kind of want to look at it that way. And having your perspective where it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, and you have to adapt with the actual technology is fantastic.
Yep.
We've talked about this before in the past when it comes to like the marketing degree and stuff like that, where it's like all this stuff that's taught is a lot of it's kind of antiquated in theory,
Yeah.
And it doesn't have that new approach. Whereas like if I wanted to get into advertising, my route would be go into marketing.
Yep.
Go into marketing, get a degree there, and actually learn it. Whereas if I really wanted to be competitive in marketing and advertising, I'm better off going with IS because I know how to create these ML systems that are going to allow me to create predictive models that are killer for an actual agency. Yeah. Whereas I'm not just going out there and picking the roses, I'm going out there and I'm actually making the bouquet now. Yeah. So I like the analogy that you created there, and I think it's fantastic that you're looking at it in that perspective when it comes to new curriculums and everything like that.
Yeah. A lot of this comes down to the traditional educational model where, this was for the post-war, post-US war factory workers. Mm-hmm. And you had one smart person in the middle of the room or at the front of the room saying, here's everything I know, or here's everything you need to know about this topic, and then repeat it back to me on a test, and then go out into the factories and then just do things. Yeah. Yeah. And here, especially in IS, like, I don't know everything there is to know about IS. Yeah. Like, even in a Python class, I could tell you everything you need to know about Python 2.6, but now we're on Python 3.7, right? I still don't know everything. So once you understand that, then you can kind of say, okay, let's then reframe our curriculum to not tell students everything that there is to need to know, because we can't do that, right? Let's give them the mindset to be able to use this information, use all this readily available information to go out and create things, solve problems.
So do you administer a lot of tests in your classes, or?
For most of for my 2 core classes, I do 3 quizzes. Okay. And then the large part of the grade is going to be a project. Okay. Where you create something.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable too. Like we were just talking about the GIS class. I took it with a different professor, but I think what stood apart about that class versus other ones that I took was that it was very project based, and I was actually getting to use this software, use this program, and understand how it worked and figure out how I can use it in real life applications. I still talk to people about it today, even though I'm not actually like using it, because I actually understood why it's so valuable versus having to I guess memorize a ton of words and then regurgitate it and then forget it. That's usually what happened. So, and I'm sure you've been in the same boat too.
Yeah, absolutely. I oftentimes. Yeah. I think when it comes down to it as well, I mean, one question I want to ask you, kind of picking your brain a little bit, is how would you design like a series of courses? Like if you were looking at someone full on 4-year person, let's say they're coming in pre-business as well, right? Let's say you have them for all 4 years. What and you're going with IS. What would that look like? Because I know right now undergrad, how many classes are you teaching?
3 to 4.
3 to 4.
Yeah.
101 is one of them. That's just information systems, the kind of general 1 through 9 that we have to kind of go through.
The core.
Python, and then
database.
Okay.
And then this year also GIS.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Nice. Do you think that doing it the way you're doing it now makes sense, or would you rather do something that's more sequential? It's a question that we brought up to Jonathan as well, where it was like, do you think right now the way it's going is something that you're more so working in the sandbox that you're given, as opposed to working in an optimal kind of situation?
Yep. Right now, it's very much a sandbox, given that UCR has had some problems with not having a full-time faculty member, right? So traditionally lectures. And I would think of a series as kind of what you guys talked about in Jonathan's episode of like connect classes to each other. So right now classes are very siloed. You can take one class and then not use any of that in another class, right? And that's just not for IS. It's for many curriculums, curricula around campus. So what I would do is maybe start with 101. And one thing that I've tried to push for is to move all the core classes like up front. So if we do get this 4-year major, take 101 and all your 1 through 9s up front first 2 years, right? So that you can have this foundation to pursue the rest of your concentration. Right. And then for something like a series, let's say that you would start with Python programming. So maybe 1 beginner course and then 1 advanced course, kind of like in accounting. Yeah. And then from there, go into AI, ML, something like that. And then end with some sort of like capstone, kind of like engineers or designers have, right? So here's this capstone AI or ML project. Use all of your knowledge from core classes, Python, everything like that to go through that. And then I believe you talked about it in Jonathan's episode, but having some sort of like series or tracks, right?
Yeah,
So not just I'm an IS concentration, but I am a, you know, AI ML person, or I'm a data viz person, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think stuff like that's important, because what you end up getting instead of that is, and I know that you did it as well, where like you graduate with one degree, but you know that you basically could have also graduated with another one, because you basically only took classes in 2 majors. Like some people, it's they're of the mindset where it's just like, this is my concentration, I'm gonna do this concentration, and then I'm just gonna close my eyes and throw a dart at a board and see what it sticks to, and that's the class I'm gonna take besides this, because it doesn't matter. Whereas with myself, and Nikhil, you can speak on this as well, is I did marketing, obviously, because I think that it's interesting, but I also could have just as easily signed up to do management if I wanted to. But I think having it in the way that you're saying, where it's like, yes, I'm graduating with IS, I understand that, but I'm actually specifically going towards, you know, machine learning. I'm going to be like, whatever it is, like someone that just creates predictive models, whatever have you. I think that's a lot more interesting and a lot more fulfilling, I think, at the end of the day, than like me, where I have to be like, yeah, I have a marketing degree, but I'm really interested in like consumer psychology, so I took a lot of management classes too, but technically it's not on my paper, and if I was to apply to a job, no one's gonna know that. You know, whereas with what you're saying, it's something that's very tangible, it's something that's very uniquely you, in the sense of what it is that you actually end up wanting to go towards. And I think that's something that, in my opinion, works out a lot better for students.
Yeah, no, I really like what you said about pushing the core classes back. We do have that pre-business program right now, and I'm sure it's there for specific reasons, but I think while it works in certain ways, I think what I ran into was like the only business class I took was Business 20 for like the first 2 years, basically. And I think I always knew I wanted to do marketing with like tech, which is how I ended up choosing IS. But for many people, it's like they don't really know what they want to do in business. They just know they want to do business, and they have to wait like 2 years to be able to decide that. So that's like one thing for sure. And then I think like on a more like personal level, I think like right now my career is in UX UI. I would have loved to be able to have like some sort of track where it's like kind of taking the marriage of marketing, marriage of information systems, and go down this user experience UX track basically, and learn all about that and be prepared for it in the real world. Whereas I think once I got into that real world in like an actual job and stuff, I felt a lot more lost and stuff, because there wasn't a lot of that like practical knowledge that I was able to take out of that university experience, basically.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's kind of along the lines of what you're saying. When it comes down to getting the actual experience that you want to get out of the whole thing, and instead you're kind of like trapped in this kind of self-made box of, this is what's on paper, this is what you gotta do, and then the rest is you kind of are going, oh crap, I have to figure this out, and I have to do it quick, and I have to do it in a way that still kind of keeps you in what you want to do and what you've kind of learned in the past.
You may have heard about like the T model of breadth versus depth, right? So you kind of generalize breadth-wise, and then you go specialize depth-wise. Go niche, and then what I recommend, what a lot of recruiters are starting to recommend, is go niche right away, right? So I call it the inverted T model. Go niche, and then solve a specific problem for that company, or solve a specific problem just in general. Because if you are just solving a general problem, most likely the company can hire someone to do that, outsource it, or automate it, right? So they don't actually need to hire you. If you can solve a niche problem, if you can solve a specific problem, they're going to say, we want this person, we need this person, right? And then once you niche down, then you can begin to generalize around that niche.
Interesting. So it's, you're kind of a jack of all trades, but within your actual niche.
I would niche first and then be more of a generalist. So in recruiter speak, this is the utility unicorn versus the experienced expert. So companies don't want to hire a utility unicorn, because if you're doing everything, then you're really good at nothing, right? So you want to be good at one thing to say, you need me for this, role or whatever,
Yeah.
and niche down, solve that problem, and then around that niche, then you can begin to generalize. So let's say you are like the specific, Python person or JavaScript person, right? Niche down, solve that problem, and then begin to generalize, and then go into full stack or something like that.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a different. I prefer that approach way more than the approach that I was kind of given when it comes down to school and everything like that, where it's just like, you have to know everything about marketing. Here's like everything that you need to know, learn it. And it's like, okay, I know marketing now. And then it's just like, okay, cool. Now go work for a company. And it's like, all right, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. It's like, all right. And then they just give you a project to work on and you're like, all right, time to Google it.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
It's totally my experience.
Yeah. It's a fun experience. Don't get me wrong. It definitely prepares you for the real world and the hard knocks and everything like that. But I think it'd be a little bit better if I went in knowing exactly what problem I was solving, as opposed to just kind of getting thrown into a pit of fire and hoping that I can escape it.
Yeah.
So is that something you're trying to implement right now, or is that something that you'd hope to implement?
Yeah, I'm trying to implement it. It's going to take quite a while, more so than the 2 to 3 years it takes to create a course, because we're going to have to create a series of courses, and then our business school in general is trying to fight for the 4-year major.
Okay.
So students can come directly into School of Business, and then that way they can take their core classes early on and then begin to specialize.
Would UCR be the first one to do, of the UCs, to do a 4-year business program?
That I don't know.
Because I feel like that's so...
Yeah,
like, why not?
I know Berkeley has pre-biz, and then I think UC has the same too.
Yeah.
And then no other UC has
business. Yeah, because that just, at least for me, it's kind of a no-brainer to make it a 4-year thing, just because you're cramming hard in those 2 years.
Yeah.
Like pre-business kind of gets away with 3 years, depending on where you are. Just because I think the quarter prior to their third year, they can start taking classes. But like when I first went there, it was a mess. Yeah. Like when I transferred over, it was like fighting for classes, making sure you had your classes, making sure that you had everything lined up. And it's this sort of, okay, you just transferred in, you took your breadth courses. Cool. Now, hey, you have to figure out in about, 30 seconds what you want to do, as a career. Yep. And I think that is not a good position to be in, to say the least, especially for someone who maybe is a bit younger and doesn't necessarily understand what it is that they want to do, and just kind of has this, maybe I want to do that. I don't really know.
Yeah. I think one thing I'll always be a little upset about is that my lowest grade at UCR was in a breadth course for basically studying insects, and I just had to memorize a bunch of insect terminology. Lowest grade at UCR. I'm still kind of upset about it.
Do you remember anything?
No.
Well, that's involved. There's your. That's why you got a low grade. You have no one to blame but yourself.
Hey, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about kind of just like memorizing, having to regurgitate it, and then like forget it after. It's like, what am I going to do with this insect information, right?
It is one of the reasons why I did not major in psychology and instead went to business. Was because like
you have to memorize a bunch of stuff.
You basically have to memorize whether it's like specific people, whether it's specific theories. You have, all it is just remember it, and then it's this weird mentality of like, okay, now don't challenge that. Like that is the theory. That's where you're kind of at, as opposed to a business where I think it's a bit. I don't want to say it's a thinking person's kind of thing, but it's, and especially with like engineering and things like that, where it's like, no, here's kind of how we're doing it now. But there's a multitude of ways to do it.
Yeah, and I think and we don't know that this is the right way to do it.
Exactly.
Right? It's just the way that we're doing it right now.
Exactly. Which again, that's why I went business route and not the psychology route, because I couldn't do it. I love psychology, but I could not for the life of me be that kind of person, like where it's just memorization, regurgitation. I have to see the theory, understand the theory, and then practice the theory.
Right.
So does a 4-year business degree basically like eliminate breadth courses, or just minimizes them a lot and lets you take more business courses?
I think it would minimize them. And then here's where I'm fully unqualified to speak on this, but
that's our favorite kind of speaks, actually. So.
That's why I'm here. But I think right now it's mostly a political battle.
Sure.
Because our pre-business students, they go to CHAS. So if we get a 4-year major in School of Business, then CHAS is like, well, we lose 2 years of students. And then a lot of our students who don't get into business, they just transfer over to CHAS. So CHAS gets this foot in the door of retaining students. And so really that's from what I've heard, this is what it comes down to, is just political battle.
Can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
No, it's all a big Game of Thrones episode at the end of the day.
And you'll see a lot of business schools, they're trying to move to the 4-year major.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows it's the right thing to do. As you would apply to, psychology or something like that, to where you can apply directly into School of Business. But they're all fighting their own political battles.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot to be said, I think, about reform within education as a whole at the end of the day. And I think it's something that the three of us, I think Val definitely is the more rah-rah cheerleader for educational reform. But yeah, I think there's room for a lot of things to happen. And we've talked about this in the past about thinking about not just reforming the traditional 4-year or the traditional 2-year universities and colleges, but thinking about ways to have options and kind of going from there. We talked about this a little bit, but having online places like Coursera or we're looking like a Skillshare or Masterclass or something like that, or taking a Bootcamp. I recently just read an article 2 days ago about how a lot of schools are now looking at Coursera specifically as a big threat. Now it's finally starting to dawn on them that some employers are looking at Coursera degrees, if you want to call them certificates and degrees, as viable options now, because a lot of big tech firms have removed the need for a college degree and stuff like that. So it's if you know what you're doing, then you know what you're doing. Even in the article that I read, they talked about how, and I brought this up again, but it was the Google machine learning course that they have for free, is if you have that and you complete that, you actually get put on Google's radar of oh, you're somebody who very directly knows what we need and how we're doing it internally.
You're in the talent pool.
Exactly. You're already in the talent pool. And that already puts you in a way better position as opposed to maybe an engineering student who just studied it and then applies for that job. So I think there's a big room and a big gap that needs to be filled. I'm kind of curious on what your take is on that, the Coursera's or companies that are literally just saying actually, if you're good at it, we'll take you and we don't need to worry about necessarily formal education. Though some places if you want to do a director position or something like that, you need that master's.
Yeah, I think Coursera is a good option. One thing to keep in mind with Coursera is that unlike something like Udemy, where it's just a person creating a class, these are actual courses designed by colleges and universities, right? And a lot of them run concurrently on the ground campus and also on Coursera. So while you don't get the official university certificate, you are getting an actual university level class. And depending on the type of employer that you are, you might say, hey, that's good enough, right? To say, for example, the most popular Python course on Coursera is from University of Michigan, which is a great engineering school. So an employer might see this and say, okay, you learned Python from University of Michigan, that's good enough, right? And then we can teach you whatever else you need to know on the job.
Yeah, I think it's something that's interesting, especially, all of us are of the mindset of constantly learning. Nikhil, I know you're looking up UI UX,
bootcamps and stuff.
Bootcamps and everything like that, to constantly keep learning. I'm putting myself through torture right now.
Where are you learning your course?
Completely, we're talking so I'm doing oh my gosh, I always forget the website. I have it loaded up right
He
now.
doesn't even remember where he's learning it from. I think that tells a lot. Are you actually
I have the bookmarks. Kaggle. Kaggle is
okay, Kaggle, yeah.
Yeah. So
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, you're not in the know. Kaggle is where I'm learning Python.
They don't offer any insect classes on Kaggle.
No insect classes on Kaggle.
They might, I don't know.
But yeah, that's where I'm doing most of the stuff. But I'm curious as to if something kind of opens up, what is that tipping point for a lot of people, whether it's monetarily, whether it's ease of access. I'm wondering when these services just become a duh moment for people. And I don't know, I think it's me just like speaking into the wind right now. It's like, where is that tipping point? I think everybody is different, but I also think that there is a lot of room for a lot of different options right now that are happening within tech.
I'm going to bring in an idea. This is from Professor Scott Galloway at NYU. He's a professor of brand strategy, and he's looked a lot at education reform and how we can adapt with the times. And it's especially meaningful because he's in academia, so he's like speaking from the inside. And he has his idea to say, wouldn't it be nice if like Google created their own classes or Apple created their classes and then partnered with an institution like MIT or Stanford, right? So that you get the content knowledge and the experience from these companies that are actually using this material in the world. And then you get the credentialing from these accredited universities. And so, let's say Google wants to teach that ML class on a campus, right? Partner with a UC, and then Google provides the content and maybe also the instructors, and then UC provides the credentials and the TAs and things like that. And I think it might be a pretty viable option in the near future.
That sounds like an amazing idea. Honestly. It sounds like it's a direct pipeline for those companies to have a talent pool directed specifically for what their problem is, while at the same time allowing these universities, whether it's a UC or whatever, to have partnerships with these massive corporations that at the end of the day, it seems, if what I'm understanding is correct, the overhead for the actual college itself isn't more than a TA in a room.
You can think of it that way.
I would have loved to have graduated with a certificate in like Google Analytics or AdSense or anything like that. Like that, little things like that would have been cool. Or coming out with some kind of design certificate as well, I think would have been pretty rad. That's a really interesting idea.
And there are some programs like Lambda School, if you've heard of that, where you can go and you can get this university level degree and you pay nothing. And then once you get a high paying skilled job, then you pay back your tuition in different installments.
They're blowing up right now. They got like a massive round of funding, right?
So you attract the students that really want to learn something, right? They're not here to take different breadth classes or whatever. They really want to learn something, and they are incentivized to find these students good careers, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't be able to pay back their tuition.
It directly impacts them. It's to their betterment to have them go into high paying jobs.
I think ultimately, like, what I'd love to see, and I think it's starting to go in that direction, is like having the university or like this education be directly connected to jobs, like directly connected to these companies, and actually be in touch with what's happening out there, while also being affordable and accessible. I think that combination is very important in what most people are looking for, right?
So I actually take the kind of other-ish, we might be on the same approach, but I would almost rather somebody not necessarily go in for any one particular company, like have the company solve a problem,
right,
but rather look industry-wide, as a whole thing, where it's like, I like the idea with like Google and like companies coming in and doing stuff like that, but I think that it still speaks to the kind of need that exists with professors and with lecturers and these people who are within the industry, not just within the company, to address the kind of gaps that exist between what could be happening in the future and what's happening right now.
Right.
Where it's like, I think even like a hybrid model where it's like you can take like an introductory class with a corporation, and then you take this sort of theoretical class based off of what you learn in that class to show where it's going.
Right.
Not just learn how to exactly do what you need to be doing right now for this company, but then also look at how can you stay competitive in that company and ensure that you're staying up to date with any growth in technology or any things that are happening right now. I think that's kind of the approach that I look at industry-wide, as opposed to focusing in on any one company's needs. But I think that kind of touches on the idea, Rich, that you brought up, where it was like, the way education was taught was like this one person who would stand in the front of the room, show what's happening, and what's needed, and then have them go back to the factories and actually do the thing. I think that that could, in theory, be a bottleneck if you just focus on like these companies teaching the courses, where if you're looking industry wide, again, like I said, I think that opens up that bottleneck, and it kind of allows for more bandwidth.
That's a good point. So maybe instead of one company, maybe like a consortium, right, to say here's the tech consortium, here's the marketing consortium, things like that.
I think that's just my 2 cents. But who am I, who am I to say what the future of education is going to look like? Speaking though, I do want to shift over now. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up blockchain.
Okay.
Because truth be told, I'm in this weird space, and I think a lot of people are. I don't think I'm alone here.
Right.
I know blockchain is important, but I don't care enough to know and learn about blockchain.
Okay.
So it's like blockchain, cool. Future also doesn't involve me, so I'm not going to learn about it. Which I think is maybe a naive take to have, because I think I might just be like old person shakes fist and stares at cloud, where it's like I am looking at the future of not just my own industry, but in multiple industries, and instead of embracing it and trying to learn it, I'm instead going, I don't need that. Where I literally, half our job, I think, is us going, why are they still doing it like that? Why are they doing marketing this way? Why aren't they doing it in the whatever? I can go on for a long time, but what is blockchain?
Let me take your example one step further and say that 80% of the people who talk about blockchain have no idea how blockchain works.
Nice.
Can I try and explain what blockchain is before you do it?
Go ahead.
So there's this chain.
Okay.
Val's cringing.
Yeah, there's
Val's cringing right now.
You're giving him another medical episode right now.
I'm giving him another. Oh, he is hurting right now. But I'm gonna try my best. From what I know, and I know tiny amount. But it is so I know there's a ledger.
Okay.
I know. Okay, am I doing good so far?
Sure.
There's a ledger, and it's basically this big notebook where anybody that's within like the blockchain that has access to like make transfers and stuff like that can see the ledger. So if I give you a file, like if I share something to you, Nikhil can see that I share something to you, and they can see exactly what the thing was that I shared to you. So it's this kind of, instead of it being this like this very much like singular kind of transaction, now it's becoming this kind of like open thing where everyone can confirm that transaction occurred and can confirm the two parties that did it. Now whether or not they know the identities of the two parties is different from knowing the, let's say, like the location or like the IP of the actual persons, because I could be me, Luis, but when I do the transfer, I can do it anonymously, if that's correct. So I could be me, but I could do it anonymously, or I could do it publicly. Is that also an option, or is it just entirely anonymous?
It's just entirely anonymous. It's based on an address, which is a long string of characters. And I teach blockchain in one of my classes. I forget the exact figure, but it's works out to every person on Earth could have something like 100 million possible addresses. Like that's how big this string is. So yeah, you're just identified by this address, and then if you want to send, let's say we're talking about Bitcoin, if you want to send Bitcoin or receive Bitcoin, then you have this public address that people can send to.
Did I do a decent job at explaining how, at least the transactional, that's literally what I know. I just know the transactional portion of it.
So let's go ahead and bring it back to the beginning. So a ledger is an account of records. So you might have used ledger in your accounting classes. Blockchain is a public ledger. So traditionally, all our ledgers have been centralized and mostly private. So only your bank knows how much you have in your bank account. If we decentralize this, then everyone knows how much you have in your bank account. And as soon as one transaction is made on the ledger, it gets copied over to everyone who has access to the blockchain. And anyone can join a blockchain and see what has been created on this blockchain. So once a certain number of transactions have been recorded, that is recorded as a block. This block is verified. Once it's verified, which is what miners do, once it's verified, it gets added to the previous set of blocks, making a chain of blocks or a blockchain.
So, okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, there are multiple kind of ledgers, if you want to look at it that way. Where it's like each block has its own kind of people who can sign into that, and
no. So every block is public, but then every block exist with the previous blocks. So you could go all the way back to block 1 and say, what did everyone start with in their accounts? And then work your way up the blockchain to say, where are we right now?
Interesting.
Yeah. Such that you cannot, let's say you wanted to give me $5, but you only had $4 in your account. You wouldn't be able to do that because everyone else on the blockchain would verify that, hey, Luis only has $4 and cannot give $5 to Rich.
Neat.
Yep.
So, I
Sure.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because like I for the most part, like I said, that's my knowledge of blockchain is just that what I said. So like all those stuff that I've heard about blockchain and all of the very early adoptions of it have been in like financial industries. Yep. Whether that's, you know, Coinbase coming in and being like the place for cryptocurrency, or it's been like financial institutions when you think like, you know, B of A or Chase kind of looking at blockchain as a way to implement it within their day-to-day activities.
Yep.
But kind of hearing you go through, I think is definitely helped me understand that it's more so this very like decentralized way of ensuring accountability.
Yeah.
In a way.
And it's probably easier not to think about it in terms of finances, but let's take something like supply chain or logistics. Mm-hmm. Right now, with our centralized record keeping, if there's an outbreak at a certain fast casual Mexican restaurant, right, of E. coli or something like that.
A certain one.
A certain one, right?
Someone may or may not have just had...
Like,
in case you are looking for sponsors, I'll just say a certain one.
Thank you.
They have to go back through their purchase records and say, where did we purchase this lettuce from or something like that. Then contact the farmers and they have to look it up and all this other stuff. So it takes about 2 weeks to identify the root cause of such an outbreak. With blockchain, if everything is recorded to the blockchain, you can find out within a matter of seconds, right?
Interesting.
Down to which farm it was, but not just which farm it was, like what plot of land this lettuce came from, which farmer or farmers were working on this plot of land, and you can actually identify, you know, the individual people. And this is because, for many reasons, right? One, the ledger is decentralized, and again, a ledger is just an account of records. So it could be financial records, it could be where is this lettuce coming from, and then where is it going? And by everyone having access to this, it makes it more transparent, and then you can go verify the root cause of this outbreak.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's look, I wish that Val was here because I feel like he would be like, no, yeah, that's how it goes.
And
but
we'd just be like,
yeah, we'd be like, wow, we'd be like, wow. But I think there's so many questions I want to ask, but I think that for the sake of time, I'm just gonna kind of go down the kind of list of the stuff that I had pre-written as far as the questions go.
Okay.
So the first one here is, I think we kind of answered it, but I'd like to kind of go over it one more time. But why does everybody say that blockchain is the future of how we're going to do business and transfer information?
Why is blockchain the future? Decentralization is a big one. Right now, we can identify various aspects of our lives where one company or entity controls that. And so if we can get away from that, then we have more power and freedom for ourselves. In terms of the future, more on the tech side, a lot of this has to do with automation. So one example that I give in my classes is, let's say that you have solar panels installed on your house and you generate more electricity than you use. Right now, what you could do is sell this electricity back to the electric company, and then they would go and sell it in other places. With blockchain, if you can record transactions automatically, you could sell it directly to your neighbor without having to go through this centralized electric company.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So you're basically, so if this is kind of the theme, you are removing the middleman.
Yep.
So instead of it being you, energy company, your neighbor, now it's just a straight shot to the direct person that you're going with.
Yep.
So instead of me having to have money in my money stored in a bank and then transfer that money to you, now I'm transferring the money directly from me to you, from underneath my mattress to now underneath your mattress. But it's all digital.
My microwave, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that it was like a removal of the middleman there. That made me think of something when you were saying this sort of removing of the middleman. Is what would something like this look like in regard? Because like a big thing right now happening is this sort of these big tech companies kind of having their feet up to the fire when it comes to data privacy, and how it's going. I mean, there's even a proposition right now going through California, I think 24, that is another data privacy kind of thing.
Right.
How would blockchain, if it could, kind of assist with this whole, companies are just using our data to make money, big data argument? Like, is there a world where blockchain can assist with decentralizing our sort of, if you want to look at like very specific, like just cookies, for example, is there a way where companies can no longer track our online personas using blockchain?
Not that I know of, and I don't know if blockchain would be the answer to that.
Okay.
For something like cookies are a required part of the internet, and if you use a company's website or product, they're still going to be able to track you that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Blockchain is primarily more for something like records management. So something like a student ID, or you can think of a student going through 4 years of university saying, what are the classes that I have taken? And how does this, apply to my record? So instead of having a transcript, you have a blockchain of all your classes, all of your certificates, things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's cool.
But then the university itself could still be able to see what classes you've taken. So in the same vein, the company would be able to see like, oh, you were on this page, or you watched this video for 2 minutes, something like that. I don't know if blockchain can get around that.
And that also opens it up to, instead of like, I'm thinking like if you have like, let's say like a resume or something like that, you could theoretically have that on a blockchain.
Yep.
And an employer, if you're applying to a specific job,
Yep.
if it's open source, can see that and very quickly see that you've done the things and kind of verify everything in the matter of seconds.
Yep. And then everyone else who has access to that blockchain can verify this information. So you can't go and put fraudulent information on your resume, because then the other people who can access the blockchain can say, hey, my ledger says this. And then other people say, my ledger says this too. And so this gets into the 50% rule or the 51% attack rule. So it's very difficult to commit fraud on a blockchain unless you own 50% plus one more of the blockchain. So all of the computers connected to this blockchain, because it works on this principle of trustless verification.
Right.
So blockchain is actually good for parties that don't trust each other, right? Hey, I don't trust you, but I can verify your information. And so if 50% of the people verify it this way, then you have kind of like a split consensus. But if you have 50% plus one, then you can say, hey, Luis actually gave Rich $5 when in reality he had $4. And then the other nodes on the blockchain would just have to accept that, right? Now, it's very difficult to own 50% plus one of all the nodes connected to the blockchain. It's going to take a lot of computing power. You have to control a lot of machines.
Do a lot of mining.
Yeah. But it's still, so really what it comes down to, it's fairly secure, but still not 100% foolproof.
Gotcha. So, but I mean, it's difficult.
Yep.
Very difficult.
Very difficult, yeah.
Even with like, the only thing I can imagine that maybe would pose a threat would be like if a company very directly positioned all of their like a supercomputer or something like that, or towards just mining,
and probably just quite a number of supercomputers, right, to control every node connected on the internet, to blockchain.
So very difficult.
Yep.
Monetarily speaking, the return on that would be nothing, really.
Yeah, minimal.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, couldn't you then theoretically, is there only one like blockchain, or could there theoretically be
multiple blockchains?
Millions?
Yeah. So you'll see this a lot with cryptocurrencies. So there's Bitcoin, but there's also like Dogecoin, and then you can build your own blockchain. So Val, when he did studies with me, he built his own blockchain as one of his courses.
Did he make his own coin?
I don't know.
Valcoin?
Oh, a Valcoin.
If he pulls up in a Ferrari next week, then
his Valcoin traded at a penny. Man. Quick little tangent. Did you see when Dogecoin hit a penny, like during like the big boom of like Bitcoin and stuff?
I just remember that Dogecoin like started going up like crazy, like in the middle of this pandemic.
For some reason it was like a joke. People just started invested in Dogecoin.
Yeah.
But I remember being on like our crypto on Reddit and just having people be like, I joke, like when it was like 1/1000th of a penny, people were like, oh yeah, I jokingly just bought like $100 million Dogecoin, and it's like, and it hit a penny, and now I made like a few $100,000, and I'm like, what? I'm like, it's just funny, like with this kind of perceived value kind of stuff, especially with the cryptocurrencies. Lest we forget that Bitcoin hit, what did it hit, like $21,000 for one coin at
Back
one
in
point?
2018.
Back in the day.
December
Remember-
2018.
Oh, Nick's not here. He left. But Nick, I
Did he
remember
buy at the peak?
no, he had it, and when it was hitting the peak, I didn't have it, but he did, and I was like, dude, sell. It's gonna pop. The bubble's gonna pop, and he did, and it popped. So
I remember reading all these articles that were like, because I had, I think, like a quarter of a Bitcoin when it was like up in the 17,000 and stuff like that, and I remember all these people were like, it's gonna hit 25,000. That's like when it hits 25K, that's when you have to sell it. And I was like, cool. It's like in my mind, I was like, 25K, I'm out. And then I remember I was in class. I think it was like 102 or 103 when it popped. So I was in class doing my note taking, whatever it was like, and before I went into class, 20,000, and I left class and it was like 10,000. I was like, what the heck happened? I was like, I sold immediately I sold it. I was like, gone. I was like, I'm not gonna take no way am I gonna take more loss on this thing. If I had sold, whatever, man.
It's fine. That's a different podcast.
Yeah, that's a different podcast.
so blockchain has been picking up steam quite a bit for the last few years, and it's relatively new, right? So it's like, how long do you think it's gonna take when the implementation of blockchain in different industries and different use cases is going to be normal and like widespread?
It really depends on the industry. So right now in supply chain logistics, they're already using blockchain.
Okay.
And the big four consulting companies, they are hiring for people to go audit blockchain. So blockchain already exists. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is fairly popular. Things like student records or records management may be less popular. And then voting, I would say, is the least popular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that you bring up voting, I know one thing that we really wanted to focus on is how can blockchain get involved in elections and voting in the future?
Right. So before I came to the interview, I figured that Val was going to take the stance of, very pro blockchain for voting. So I wanted to come in with the opposite stance to make some, good entertainment, right? So I am leaning towards overrated on blockchain for voting for a few reasons. Number one, blockchain is inherently public and voting is inherently private. So if you put your vote on the blockchain, everyone can see how you voted.
Yeah.
That's the entire point of blockchain is to have this decentralized ledger. So that's one problem there. Another problem is when you use blockchain, you have your public address, which everyone knows, and then you have a private key, which only you should know to unlock your funds, right? So I use the analogy of a mailbox. Everyone can deposit things into the mailbox, but if you want to open the back of the mailbox and take out your mail, you have that one private key and you shouldn't share it at all. If you lose that private key, you're not able to open the mailbox. And remember that
happened a lot with when Bitcoin was at its max. A lot of people lost their keys on like hard drives when they put it in cold storage.
So you have millions of dollars just gone. And you have to remember, we talked about the public address for blockchain. It's like a huge string of numbers. This string gets one-way hashed, meaning that there's a function run on it, and it only goes one way. So it converts this string one way, but you can't use the same hash function to convert it backwards. So you get your private key by doing a one-way hash on your public key. With the number of strings possible per human on the planet, right? Tens of millions or hundreds of millions. If you forget your public key, it's not like you can just hash a random value, right? You have to know your specific value. So that's one problem, or one of the many problems. And when we talk about public addresses, if anyone can create a public address, doesn't that mean anyone can vote multiple times if you use blockchain for voting? So you have to tie that back to identity management, saying this random string of numbers belongs to Rich, and we have verified it in this way. If you don't have that verification process, I could create 5 addresses and vote 5 times.
Yeah, because I one thing that I've been interested in, one thing I've thought about since like hearing about those people that lost like the millions of dollars during that whole craze with Bitcoin is there not some way to create some kind of biometric way to kind of go in there, like where it's like, and maybe there's not because of the nature of blockchain, but creating, I don't know, whether it's a fingerprint, whether it's an iris scan, whatever is like the most secure, most like Mission Impossible technology that it can exist, to identify the person and allow them actually access to their actual public key. Like, would that not be a thing that could work? Because if that's the case, then that could be a way to actually verify one person, one vote.
Let's say that we had this Mission Impossible technology for retina scanning and all this other stuff. Then why would you need blockchain? Why couldn't you just use this technology in regular voting? So a lot of the proponents of no blockchain for voting are actually saying the more you try to solve for blockchain for voting, the more benefit you're bringing to traditional voting, right? To say, hey, let's put in retina scanning on the blockchain so that no one can, make a fraudulent vote. Then just take that retina scanning technology and then move it towards traditional voting. And then you don't need the blockchain. And then going back to the problems, many people don't understand it. If they don't understand it, they don't want to use it.
Right.
And also, when we throw technology at a problem, so this is a problem I don't think we should throw technology at. There's many different problems, but when we throw technology at a problem, that is just another avenue for misinformation or voter suppression in this case. To say, hey, I could reasonably say, oh, if you have an Android phone, you can't vote on blockchain. Your vote won't count. And then there are people out there who will have Android phones and say, oh, I can't vote, right? Or think of like a phishing scheme to say, hey, check if your vote counted. Go ahead and paste your private key into this website and we can tell you, right?
Yeah.
Then I get your private key and then I can change your votes, right? Or nullify your vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those are, I think the phishing one is, I think, the best kind of thing because that's just, more often than not, that's how hackers get in. Like, it's not some guy with the fingerless gloves or a person with the fingerless gloves, like breaking into the Pentagon. It's usually just an email phishing thing, and then you're screwed.
Yep.
Then you gave your login.
Yep.
It's a good point.
So those are the cons. What would, I don't know, do you know what Val's like positives?
Yeah, what could let's kind of conjure him, if you will. We don't have any Ouija boards lying around, but
you have to ask him maybe for a follow-up episode. But I think some of the pros would be you have the records stored, right? So if everything in blockchain were to work properly for voting, then we wouldn't have things like the recount mishap of 2004 because everything is already counted, right? And then not only is it counted, but it's also verified by everyone who has access to the blockchain.
Right.
Well, I don't know about the counting in general, but at least the sort of knowing someone's voting history. Doesn't that already sort of exist? Like, I don't know if I can see who they voted for, but like if I was to look like Nikhil, I could see that he voted in X election. Like I don't know how extensive that is, but I can't see like who you voted for, but I can see that you did vote.
You can see that you have voted in an election. You can't see who you voted for. If we were to make this information public on blockchain, and again, blockchain is inherently public, then that is another avenue for voter suppression or like voting coercion.
Because people might be scared to actually vote what they want to vote for, and if they can't vote for what they want to vote for, they're just not going to vote. Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting take on it. I mean, like I said, I came into this conversation of like voting and elections under this kind of idea of blockchain with like no opinions whatsoever. So like hearing you kind of give your opinion on it, it definitely makes sense to me on why it might not be the best use case for something like this.
I'll clarify that by saying not the best use case right now. Right. So definitely not for this election, and then maybe not for the next, let's say 2 to 3 elections. Right. But maybe in the future, once blockchain gets more widely accepted into our daily lives, to say, okay, now everyone has a Bitcoin wallet or something like that, then we can maybe look at, okay, can this technology work? And again, if we have to introduce the Mission Impossible technologies, right, we might as well just put that into our traditional voting and then work on traditional voting to try to digitize it or modernize it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have just gone onto a URL, answered a few security questions, and put in my voting that way.
Yep.
Just because for me, it's like I went straight to the registrar's office because, like, I don't know, like I'm not that far from it, and I was like, I would rather just drop it off in the box that someone that's going to count my vote can walk to than it have to go through all these moving parts and kind of go through it. Now, whether or not it's just me being over cautious is probably the case, because I mean, nothing's going to happen. This is a very secure system that's been tried and true for a long time. But I think that having it be online, having it be digital, having it be decentralized, having it be something that is public, and at least has some sort of technological embrace behind it is something that I can 100% get behind. Yeah, because
and that's one of the platforms Andrew Yang was running on when he was campaigning, is not so much blockchain for voting, but let's modernize and digitize voting so that we don't have these like fill in the bubble errors.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, there's like a lot of just controversy and different things going on with like the mailing system and stuff like that anyway, so which is why I think it is smart to go and drop off your ballots
right to the source.
To the source. But yeah, no, so basically short term for you it's a no, but long term it's a perhaps.
Short term is a no from me, dog. Long term maybe, we'll see.
Houseway.
Yeah.
How? I'm curious, what's the tech, what's the point for you where you go, okay, cool, I can get behind that? Like, what do you think is missing?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to give you a very simple answer, and that is that when people smarter than me tell me that they accept it.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a whole host of cryptographic issues.
Okay.
So in cryptography, they're talking about, can we make your public key also a secret? And then that way, like, you are recorded on the blockchain, but then like you can't be identified, and therefore your vote can't be tracked back to you, things like that. So if we could work out things like that, I think blockchain itself needs to be more widely adopted in the current environment. So I have a Bitcoin wallet, but none of my family members do, right? And these family members or the people in your community are the same people who are going to be voting. So they're going to have your take on it to say, I don't understand it, so I don't want to use it, right? Or I don't trust it. It's going to take some sort of community adoption to say, okay, I do kind of understand how this works. I use it daily. I've paid my rent through Bitcoin, something like that. And now I'm more trusting of using blockchain for voting.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to get my 60-plus-year-old parents, into like some kind of crypto wallet, like at all. Like I can barely get them to like do FaceTime with me. So
yeah, I installed the crypto wallet the other week, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm not going to do anything right now.
Which one did you install?
I don't even remember. It's just on my phone, but I've never actually like used it because I've heard like people getting good gains out of like Bitcoin and stuff, and I was like, let me check it out. But I was like, no, I need to learn more about this before.
Yeah, my brother is a massive crypto dude. Like, he's just like, the government issued money is a sham, kind of that guy,
Yeah.
So he's like full on Bitcoin, most coins actually. I think he has like mainly his big thing is Ethereum based coins. But, I mean, for whatever reason, and again, I don't know. Apparently, there's a difference between like Ethereum based coins and like Bitcoin versus Litecoin. Like there's
some differences. I don't know the technical details behind those differences, but
neither. A lot of people say that Ethereum is a lot more usable for day-to-day practices, but like I said, I don't know how or why really. Okay, so I mean I think that I can speak for myself. I don't know about you, Nikhil, but I'm coming out of this with a way better understanding of really what Bitcoin is, how it can impact like my day to day, especially in the future, as well as kind of its role it can play in elections. Because the point that I was before the conversation was just like nothing.
Yeah. So
I think it's cool that I can hold my own. I think if someone tries to talk about Bitcoin to me now, because
you mean blockchain.
There I go again. Yes, I do mean blockchain, not Bitcoin. I apologize. How many P's is it again? It's like the 6 P's or whatever.
The 17 P's?
Yeah, there you go. 17 P's. Yeah. Anything you want to say, Nikhil, before we move on to the next thing?
No, I think the examples were great. I think that helped me too, because I was pretty much in the same boat. I was like, I get this is the future, and I get it's some revolutionary stuff, but I don't get why, completely. So, yeah. You want to switch on to the next topic?
Let's go to the next thing. Next topic, and one that, it's in the title. It's future tech.
Okay.
We want to talk about the future, where it's going. So both Nikhil and myself have like 2 topics I want to bring up. So I'll bring up mine right now.
Okay.
Which is AR tech in general. It's making like a massive kind of push, especially in advertising and especially like in sports, specifically. But like I'm interested to kind of get your understanding from what you see is like, do you think that with now AI being so readily available and like people actually knowing what they're doing and like knowing how to showcase data sets or how to showcase whatever in like a really fun way through visualizations, do you think that we're entering like this really cool age of like in advertising or just in general where AR can be like at the forefront of that?
Yeah. And I think I'm more bullish on AR than VR. VR has that hardware requirement.
Yeah.
And my cousin has a VR setup, and I played a game or a few games on it for maybe about half an hour while we were waiting for something. And then after the half hour, I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you jump around in VR and you can do different things, and it's like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But if you take AR and maybe apply it to marketing, right? Or even just general life, go to a museum, hold your phone up, and then get an AR display of whatever it is you're looking at. Let's say that you are just here in the office, you could have AR ads and, AR heads-up displays.
Yeah.
So I think AR has more potential use for things like marketing and daily life.
Yeah, totally. I think the one example I remember for some reason is like when Nike did something on Snapchat when I think this was a couple of years ago, they had like if you brought up Snapchat like in a Nike store, you get this like huge LeBron James wearing his new like clothing line or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think AR over VR for me too, because I haven't been able to actually experience VR yet because of my glasses.
Yeah.
It's tough for glasses. It sucks. Like I haven't been able to actually like wear an Oculus properly and enjoy it. So Facebook, if you're listening, please.
They
don't discriminate.
They don't discriminate.
Don't discriminate.
They track everyone regardless of whether you wear glasses.
They sell these like you can get prescription lenses that fit on.
I'm not buying prescription lenses for somebody else's Oculus.
The fact that you just say I'm not buying prescription lenses and you're literally wearing prescription lenses.
No, for somebody else's Oculus.
Okay, I get you. I'm saying if you want to get your own Oculus, there's an avenue for you.
I don't.
What'd you play in AR?
I forget the title, which
says a lot.
Yeah, says a lot. But it was this game where you clicked a point in the room, and then your character would like jump there.
Yeah.
And then once you are in midair, you can hit another button to like do slow mo, like Matrix bullet time, and then like shoot guns and like shoot bows and arrows.
Oh, were you playing Super Hot?
Maybe.
It was like red. It was like red figures, and it was like
Yep,
Super Hot. Yeah, that game is a workout.
Yeah.
My buddy is big on VR, and he let me borrow his old VR stuff. And Super Hot, Beat Saber are the 2 games that that and like
Beat Saber,
Phasmophobia is like a new thing that is being played now. It's like a spooky ghost hunter game. Stuff like that. It's fun, but I always get nauseous. I can't do it.
Yeah, many people get nauseous, and again, a lot of people they come away with like, okay, so what? Right? This was fun for 30 to 45 minutes, maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But how is this useful in my real life? If I have to drag the headset plus the sensors plus have enough space to do this,
and I think it's interesting to me that Facebook is doubling down so hard on VR. Because I get the way that they're going. Like now that the Quest 2 just came out, I think it came out literally this week. The Quest 2, where it's no longer necessary to have it linked to a computer. You could just plop it on with the remotes, and it tracks everything and does all the things it needs to do. But that still doesn't hit the inherent issue of like, okay, I'm still lugging around this like tiny little thing that also has a 2-hour battery life. Like, what if I have to leave at 6 a.m. and then I get to a place I'm gonna be charging this thing, I'm gonna be doing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas AR, I mean, best case scenario, you can look at some stuff like even like where you don't have to do anything. There's maybe like a pane of glass in front of an installation or something like that, and that in and of itself gives you the actual AR-ness of it. Or it's you with your phone swinging it around, going through it. When I was in the Louvre in Paris, they had AR stuff where you would point it at a thing and it would kind of tell you. Basically, all the guides there were kind of AR-ish, and by itself with this freaking like they give you a Nintendo DS. It's strange.
Like an actual DS?
Yeah, they give you a Nintendo DS, and you would open it and you would point it at the art piece, and it would tell you all the things that you need to know about it.
Cool.
It was cool that they did it with the DS, but like, it's
why DS?
I don't know, partnership with Nintendo, I guess.
Or they just had a bunch that weren't being sold or something, or
probably
why,
they just gave them to the Louvre and they're like, here you go, please take these DSs, please get them away from us. It was interesting though that they saw that and they wanted to kind of pursue that down the line, instead of like you could pay to get someone to guide you through the museum, or you could pay substantially less. Actually, no, I think it was included with a ticket to just you have to wait in line for it. Yeah, and they would just give you this DS that you would lug around with you, and like you would see people walking around with like a DS dangling off their neck. It was funny, but like it was interesting, and that's why I kind of think that AR is. I agree with you. I'm way more bullish on AR than I am on VR, because like it's so easy to just point a phone at something, and get the information that you need, or get the extra information that you need. Apple's doubling down on it. Their track record's decent.
And I'm gonna give you a super hot take right now. With Apple's huge investment into AR, I think they're going to be the next company, or one of the next companies, to do glasses. If you can pilot AR technology on the phone and make it useful, and then make a pair of glasses that aren't ugly like Google Glass. Like if Apple came out with a pair of glasses, I would buy them, right? I don't wear glasses, but I would buy them just to be cool, right? But we leave it to a company like Apple that makes beautiful products, that can get the glasses design correct and bring in AR. I think that's going to be the next step.
Yeah, Apple appreciates design too. Yep. So I think like I could probably see myself wearing Apple glasses.
And then we've had, let's say, two reasonably big failures. One was Google Glass, and then the other one was spectacles from Snapchat. Yeah. So Apple can take all of these learnings and then build kind of their vision of, AR through the eyes.
So that actually brings me to a really good question here from Benjamin Gonzalez on LinkedIn. How can AR or VR, I think here we're going to focus more on AR, but we'll touch on VR too, be used to help teams connect better from remote working aspect? And I think that there's a massive, especially with AR, there's a huge amount of possibilities for team collaboration now that everyone's all remote.
There are companies working on this right now, and I don't know if it's considered like strict AR, but there's web conferencing technology to where the camera's pointed at you, and then what you see on the screen is as if you were looking around the same room. So, it's not just a multitude of Zoom backgrounds, but everyone has the same like kind of conference room-y background. And now with Apple and their spatial audio, right? If you're here and you're talking, I'm hearing your voice this way. And if I turn this way, then I hear your voice still from this way, right? So a lot of these immersive technologies then would be able to not just connect people working remotely, but you could perform simple medical procedures for, like someone in a developing country, right? You're here in Southern California, and then you can use AR, maybe also VR, to do these remote procedures.
So funny enough, that also kind of takes me to my second point of my question, which was 5G, which I think that the reason why I'm so bullish on AR is the fact that the US seems to be pushing heavy into 5G. Whether that's all the towers that are going up just like at a blazing speed at this point, or companies actually figuring out ways to get whether it's like low band, high band, and medium band, like having all of it available so it's not restrictive on distance, material, or anything. It's actually like it passes through brick. Like these issues that came up with kind of first iteration 5Gs that are now kind of being addressed through ultra wideband. the reason why I'm so bullish on AR
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that the US seems to be pushing heavy into 5G.
Yep.
Whether that's all the towers that are going up just like at a blazing speed at this point, or companies actually figuring out ways to get, like, you know, whether it's like low band, high band, and medium band, like having all of it available so it's not restrictive on distance, material, or anything. It's actually like it passes through brick, okay?
Yep.
Like where it's like where if I need something, I need an AR experience. Let's say like let's say even like for New Year's, something like that. Like let's think about like a very a simple example that's not really practical or gonna benefit a lot of people, but it's just cool. Is if you have 5G and you have this like this bandwidth to allow, you could have like the New York ball drop, right? You can have that be an entirely AR experience where like you are looking on your phone and you are seeing not just the ball drop, maybe you're seeing this like massive like stellar parade of things happening all around the actual
Customize your own message below the ball, things like that.
Exactly. Exactly. All these kind of things are becoming possible because of 5G. And I know that stadiums, I mean, you think SoFi, you think the new Baltimore Stadium, you think the new Mercedes at Dallas. All these stadiums, they're being built new with 5G in mind. They're not in like, they're not forethought. Like it's something that's like front of mind. We need to build this because if there's 5G towers in the actual stadium, that means that people can do really, really cool stuff with it. Whether that's me pointing my phone at the like what Dallas did, where I point my phone at the actual field and I see a massive like 100-foot Dak Prescott like throwing a football and showing his stats for the game so far.
Throwing an incomplete.
Yeah, exactly. or breaking an ankle, one of the two.
So like pointing it at your TV?
No, well, if you're on the field.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you're in the stadium.
Physically in the stadium.
Okay, got it.
Because if not, then they'll just show you on TV anyways. Like those big old kind of graphics that already exist.
Yeah.
But now they're bringing those TV graphics to you as a person in the actual stadium. Whether it's showing you stats or whether it's showing you maybe at some point it's going to be an advertisement where it's going to be like the Lakers when they keep a team under 100. You can go to Taco Bell and get 2 free tacos. You know, where it's like you hold your phone up to the court and it says when they keep a team under 100 and it says like go get 2 free tacos now at Taco Bell or something like that. Yeah. If you have your AR experience open, you know. Yeah, I think 5G. I'm bullish on both. I think the quicker we adopt 5G, the quicker AR becomes very, very viable. So yeah, I mean, what's your kind of take on the whole 5G stuff and everything like that?
5G, so this gets a little bit kind of political, and again, I'm fully unqualified for this opinion.
I'll go for it.
But in the past 20 years, I would say the US has gotten kind of hesitant or slow to adopt and create new technologies. So in the past 10 years, I would say countries like China are beating us in AI, right? And this is not a hidden fact. This is probably well known. So now I think the US is starting to realize, hey, we need to catch up and like be a leader again in technologies, and one way that we can do that is going to be through 5G. And something that I teach in my classes is things like self-driving cars. We have the technology for self-driving cars right now. If you have a robot vacuum in your home, you have a self-driving car. Yeah.
Roberto is our maid's name, yeah.
And
oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So there's a self-driving car here in the studio. The only thing, or one of the major things limiting self-driving cars operating, fully humanless right now, is there's no bandwidth to collect all that data, right? So typically what happens is you see the cars going around, there's like a backup driver and then like some person on a laptop. They're all collecting data from these sensors and they do some practice runs. They go back to HQ. This data gets downloaded from the laptop to whatever server, process it, and then send it back up to the sensors. And once we get 5G, we can move towards edge computing. So putting computing at the edge of the network instead of more in the central part of the network. The edge of the network being in the car itself or in the stadium itself, something like that. And yeah, one of the big limitations is, bandwidth. So 5G is going to really help with that.
Yeah. I think this all this all ties into what I guess is the next step of like the customer experience. And this is a term that I think Deloitte coined called the human experience, and something that they're really trying to push. It's basically taking like the concept of like human-centered design and a combination of like all these different new future emerging tech, such as like AI and like cameras, sensors, microphones, and all of that stuff. This all ties into what I guess is the next step of like the customer experience. And this is a term that I think Deloitte coined, called the human experience, and something that they're really trying to push. It's basically taking like the concept of like human-centered design and a combination of like all these different new future emerging tech, such as like AI and like cameras, sensors, microphones, and all of that stuff to essentially create something that understands the user's moods and, you know, reacts in a certain way. And I think a really good example I saw was of like an air traffic controller having a really long day, having to manage a bunch of different emergencies and stuff like that. And she's wearing like some like brain sensing earbuds. So I think we're seeing like a push towards that. And I think at the same time, companies that implement this stuff, they can really create a positive experience for all their employees and their workers and stuff by being able to analyze their cognitive data and stuff, although that sounds a little creepy, but analyze their cognitive data to create an environment that's the healthiest and safest and most productive for them. So what's your take on that? I think this is like, we're starting to see a lot more of it, and I think it's going to keep moving forward, but what do you think?
You see a lot of it now. Lexus and a lot of luxury car manufacturers, they have driver sensing technology, and I believe Lexus actually calls it human experience, to say if they notice maybe your head kind of nodding, like you're maybe sleepy, can they change the temperature, right? Cool it down a little bit, wake you up, play a different playlist, something like that. And once we have these technologies built more into the workplace, we can say, you know, kind of like right now what we do is you walk into a room, you say, hey Siri, hey Alexa, turn on my lights, things like that. We can make this completely seamless to say, go ahead and set up my computer this way, turn the lights to this level, turn the temperature to this level. Way back in the day, there was a rumor, don't know if it's true, but Bill Gates, when people like didn't know what was in his home, they said that he had like a blank canvas, and the canvas would display art that the specific person liked, depending on who walked into the room.
Really?
And this was 1990s, early 2000s, so like before any of these smart canvases existed. So with that sort of technology, you can create a human experience, right? It's no longer just a user experience, but it's your entire humanness, right? So vision, sense, smell, everything like that.
I mean, that's huge just for the hospitality and tourism industry. Like that technology is like, you know, I've said the story before, but like, you know, I walked into an Ace hotel and it was like, oh, there's my name on the screen, and there's like all this kind of stuff. And like, you know, more like the Four Seasons, like the Ritz, they're known for going above and beyond that, where it's like when you walk into the room, the temperature is exactly what you want it to be. The pillows are the materials that you want it to be. The sheets are what you want. The treats inside the bar, everything is catered towards you. I think with this kind of human experience at the forefront, it allows even for not just those like 4-star, 5-star hotels and resorts to be at the forefront of this, but it then allows for more budget kind of places to go above and beyond and really customize each and every experience to you, the actual person, when they're going through the whole funnel, the whole system of the thing.
And you'll see an analog process of this in a lot of Airbnbs. When you book an Airbnb, you can message the host and they'll say, hey, why are you visiting? What are your interests and things like that? So you walk into an Airbnb and it may not relate to maybe the temperature or whatever, but maybe there's a booklet of materials saying, hey, welcome Luis, right? Welcome Nikhil. You mentioned you like hiking. Here are a list of my favorite hiking spots. Or you mentioned you like food. Here are a list of my restaurants, right? And so you feel that the experience is tailored for you. And then you say, okay, this is a really great experience.
I actually just booked an Airbnb for we're celebrating my dad's birthday in Big Bear next weekend, and I had to go through that, like, why are you booking it? I've never seen that before, so now I'm expecting like a birthday card from my dad.
And wouldn't that be cool if, you know, so they probably can't do like birthday cakes anymore, but wouldn't it be cool if they just had like a cake and a little card to say, hey, welcome Nikhil and family and dad, happy birthday, enjoy your stay in Big Bear.
That'd be awesome.
I'll report back.
Yeah, let me know. If you get a cake, don't eat it. Don't touch that cake. Or just spray it down with Lysol and eat it. One of the two, right? You have options.
Yeah.
No, I think honestly, all the stuff that we went over was like super insightful and something that is at the forefront of kind of everything right now. I'll be honest with you, like especially like information systems, kind of the stuff that you're doing, your kind of bread and butter. It touches really on every aspect of a lot of stuff. Like everything that's happening right now is going towards that, where like you have to at least have some knowledge of it, regardless of what major you are, what you're doing, what your job title is. Because if you don't, you're just going to get left in the dust and you're going to get replaced, hopefully not by AI, but hopefully by someone who knows kind of what's happening and what's going on here. But I think, I mean, as far as the questions go, I think we're all wrapped up. Are you good on your end?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. Yeah, that's really it for the talking points for us. This is usually the point where Val does his close off, but you know, alas,
What?
he's dead.
He's fine.
He's dead. No, but what I do appreciate you coming on and explaining to us what's happening right now in tech and what you're doing at UCR. And I think I speak for the both of us when I say like we're excited for the changes coming to UCR and the stuff that you're kind of pushing. But also we are very sad, angry, and resentful that we are not there to be a part of those changes.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good changes happening to the school right now where I'm just like, man, like you should have graduated like 2 or 3 years later, you know?
Yeah, unfortunate, but it's good for the campus.
Yeah, because we're still connected to the school and stuff, and you know, having these conversations with professors like yourself. So it's exciting to see, you know, what's happening, and it feels good to stay connected and give back in some sort of way to the university.
And Val's helping me with changes, so you'll hear, you know, more about them from him.
We usually just ignore them. So.
Oh, okay. Well, Heidi's helping me with changes.
Oh,
so
we don't ignore her. So.
Okay, yeah.
We'll hear
Definitely do not ignore Heidi.
We'll listen to Heidi before we listen
Heidi.
to Val. Well, absolutely. Well, thank you again for everything. Way we're going to close off this show is the way that we've been closing off all of our shows recently, which is we're going to kind of ask you to go into your failure story. The reason we do that is because I think Val, Nikhil, and myself, and I think all of us on the team here agree that with social media and kind of the way that it's going, there's this big push towards just showing off the good, only the outcomes as opposed to how you actually got to that result. So what we hope to do with these failure stories is to show that failure is a thing that happens always, always and forever, will continue to happen. It's not something that necessarily defines who you are, but it does impact how you get to your endpoint.
Right.
So that's kind of why we want to push these failure stories. So without further ado, I'll give you the platform to speak on that.
Okay. So when I was thinking about this failure story, I have failed many times, and anyone in this chair or anyone in this room has failed many times. So I was wondering, what is a special failure story that I can share? And so I decided to bring one that not many people know. Actually, it's just me, my parents, and then maybe like 2 other people in this world. Back in high school, I tried out for the golf team. And back then, I was like a decent player, but I had never competed before. So the most I've done was maybe like a charity tournament, which wasn't, that stressful. So I go into tryouts. It's my first tryouts ever. And immediately, like mentally, I'm just shut down, right? There's a difference between you facing good competition and knowing that you belong there, and then you facing good competition and then like thinking that you don't belong there, right? So already my game is off. We haven't even started yet. And so we start, and I'm just not doing well. If you are familiar with golf, low score is good, and there's a score called par, which is like the number of strokes you should take for the hole. And I was 1 or 2 strokes over par on each hole. So by like hole 3, it's like kind of pointless for me to be at tryouts because I'm not going to do well coming back from that.
Yeah.
The first dagger of failure came around maybe hole 3 or 4. So in golf, for both safety and for etiquette, you want to stand behind the line of the ball when the person's hitting so that the person doesn't hit into you. What I noticed around hole 3 or 4 is that the people in my group, the other 3 people, when I would hit, they would just keep walking, to the point where, like, you know, we don't care what Rich does because, like, he's just so bad, right? We'll just keep walking, and then, you know, he's probably not going to hit it straight anyway, so we can just walk to where our balls are and he won't hit us. Okay, great. So hole 5, 6, 7, still 1 or 2 over every hole. And the second dagger failure came in at hole 7, where I was making my last putt, or hopefully my last putt, and I putt it, and the ball stops about 2 to 3 inches from the hole, right? Looked like it was gonna go in, and then just kind of broke at the end. If I had made that putt, I probably would have had enough energy and motivation to finish the round and at least, you know, complete the round. But I missed the putt, and I was just so beaten down the entire round that, like, everything just left me. And I did something that you should not do in competitive golf. I went over to the ball and I picked it up. In golf, they call this like a gimme. And if you agree with your teammates or your playing partners, hey, this is close enough, you don't have to finish the putt, you can get a gimme. But in competition golf, you need to finish every putt. And there's one guy in the group, he was half being serious, and he was also known for being a dick. So he's like half being a dick. He's like, hey, you know you need to finish out the hole, right? And I mumbled something like, you know, I'm just wasting everyone's time here, right? I'm not gonna make the team. I can't come back from 8 or 9 over. It doesn't matter if I finish this putt. To this day, I don't remember what happened the next 2 holes. I don't remember playing those holes. I don't remember signing my scorecard. I finished the round in that I made it back to the clubhouse, but I don't remember what I did. And back at that time, I did not have my driver's license yet. So my mom was waiting in the parking lot to pick me up. I get to the car and she's like, hey, how'd it go, right? And I was like, Mom, just drive like very fast, very far away from here, right? I cannot be here right now. And just ultimate failure, like everything left my body. And before I move on to the takeaways, let me kind of put a bow or a knot in this story and say, you know, then I went back and practiced the entire next year and then made the team the following year, right, at the following tryouts. When we look at failure, there are 3 primary ways that I look at failure. Number 1 is, do I not know how to do something? So did I fail because I didn't know how to do something? Number 2 is, should I have done something else first? Did I skip a step? Did I miss a step? The third way is it just simply not meant to be? So if you wear corrective lenses, you can't be like an astronaut or a fighter pilot, right? It's just not meant to be, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do. So when you come out of a failure, and everyone here or listening will fail, right? When you come out of failure, look at the failure through one of these 3 lenses to say, do I not know how to do something, right? Do I not know how to mentally compete at that level? Did I need to do something first? Or is it just not meant to be? And then when you go through this, then my takeaways from this failure is, number 1, resilience over strength. You're going to be broken down many times in your life. And if you think about it in terms of strength, you eventually lose strength, right? Hey, this barbell has 500 pounds of plates on it. You can't deadlift it because you don't have enough strength. But if you can think about it in terms of resilience, then you can say, how do I bounce back from this, right? Number 2 is you have to do the work, no matter what you do. If you did the work and you failed, that is different than you not doing the work and you failing, right? So in everything that you do and everything that I tell my students to do is just simply do the work. If you fail, then look at failure through one of those 3 lenses and see what else you need to do, and then come back and try again. So before, 2 minutes ago, only my parents and then the 3 people in my group knew about this failure story. I'm sure the whole team heard about it later, but I wanted to bring in this story to say this was my probably my first biggest failure, right? And one of the failures that kind of led me to think about, okay, how do I approach failure from here on out?
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
That's a great story.
Fantastic story. Yeah, I think it shows, and you bring up the great points with that resilience and knowing if, like you said, if this is something where like I am predestined to not be able to do something like this, like, you know, the fighter pilots not being able to do it because of corrective lenses. Is this something where I lack the strength and know-how? I think that's a really good point when it comes down to failure and being able to identify not just, oh, I failed, but instead being able to take a step back, look inward, and say, okay, why did I fail?
Right.
Where was the deck stacked against me, or did I, in some way, shape, or form, commit some sort of self-sabotage through maybe not practicing or not kind of putting the time in for something like that?
Yeah.
Anything from you, Nico?
Yeah, I think the point you made about resilience is like definitely huge. I think, yeah, everyone goes through failure, but if you take the effort to try and learn from like what went wrong or didn't go well the first time, then chances are you'll be able to succeed the second time if it's meant to be. And I've dealt with that many times. My own failure story that I shared was along the same boat. So I totally understand it. And yeah, thank you so much for those 3 points and sharing everything.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, went from about 5 or 6 people knowing that story to now, theoretically speaking, the whole internet.
The entire
the entirety of the
entire
internet.
YouTube. Yeah,
all of it. Thank you for sharing that, honestly. That's a cool story. And I think it touches on the main point of this whole segment, which is just like, you're going to fail, figure out how to be better.
Yep.
Like, it's never like you failed and then that's it. It's over. It's never to that. No one would, all this technology that exists today wouldn't exist if that was the case. It's you fail, you get up, and you kind of keep trucking on and you figure out why you failed. So thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who is watching right now on Twitch and on LinkedIn. That actually concludes the kind of majority part of the show. Is that what we're calling this? What are we calling this, Nikhil?
This is the main part of the show, yeah.
This is the main part of the show.
So don't leave yet, because we are transitioning to our fun segment called, I'm looking at the wrong camera, Over Under, where Luis will be asking us some pretty great questions, and Professor Rich and I are going to let you know, in our opinion, if they're overrated or underrated. So we're going to take a few minutes, 5-10 minutes or so, to transition. So don't leave. We're still here.
Also, we got top of the show and bottom of the show. Go vote.
Go vote.
Go vote, please. Follow us on all of our social medias. At Free Logic Media, I think on pretty much everything, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, and the Facebooks. Follow us on everything. Please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Music or wherever you get your podcasts. If you are on Apple Music, please leave a review. It helps us out a bunch. If you're watching on Twitch, make sure to give us a follow. And if you are on LinkedIn, same, please give us a follow, give us a like, and kind of keep up with what we're doing on the day-to-day, because a lot of really exciting stuff, to say the least, is coming to not just the Brew and this platform in general, but to Free Logic as a whole.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna cut out right now. Thank you so much. Please stick around if you can. Like Nikhil said, the fun part of the show is coming. Thank you for watching.